So wonderful to be here and together. It's been almost 3 months that I've been out. So being back home together in Satsang is so beautiful. And from tomorrow, hopefully, without rain at this time, we'll be in our garden, which is just right next to it. This is temporary when everything was wet, but hopefully from tomorrow we'll be able to be back out under the stars in the garden as well. So we start Satsang with a question that comes in from one of our family members joining us from all over the world through this gift of technology that we have, and they send in questions in advance, which I mention because when you go back home, if you have questions that you didn't have a chance to ask, or questions arise when you're home, feel free to send them in, because we do take every night at least one of the questions that comes in advance, and then we'll open it up to any question that anyone here might have. I have spent my whole life trying to please others, to do what they think I should do, even going so far as to feeling and believing the way that they think. The challenge, of course, is now I don't know what to do, how to think or what to believe, and I'm 54. I think it's about time I started being true to myself, whoever that is, how to do it. So this is something that impacts so many of us. We're taught from the time we're really young to make everyone around us happy. Now when we're really young, it's survival. I mean, it's just pure physical survival. A child needs its parents to like them, so they're not abandoned. We need, quite literally, to make those around us happy so that they feed us and clothe us and take care of us and don't just dump us somewhere because we don't make them happy. But the dilemma is that we take that habit and we carry that with us into our lives. It's essential for the life of an infant. But once we get older, we don't need people to like us in order to survive, but we've believed that we do. And we start to get into a situation in which our physical survival gets confused with our ego, with our personality, with our minds, with our stories. And so we literally start to feel like we will die if people don't like us. This is why, one of the things that always amazes but also really saddens me is that the number one biggest fear that people have, if you survey people, what is their number one biggest fear? It's not going hungry. It's not an earthquake. It's not a fire. It's not climate change. It's not a lion or a tiger or a bear or a wild elephant. It's not even getting shot. It's public speaking. Literally. The number one biggest fear that people who are surveyed, now obviously that doesn't include people who really are at risk for starving to death, they're not getting surveyed, but the people who answer these surveys, the people who are answering their telephones when they call, or who are walking down the street, or who are in universities or graduate schools or wherever they're doing studies, number one fear is public speaking. And I share this because you think, well, God, what is the worst that could possibly happen to you public speaking? Right? I mean, what's the worst thing? You make a fool of yourself, all right, end of the day, you try again another time. Okay, you forget your lines or your script or your speech, or, the lights go out, or who knows? Your PowerPoint doesn't work. But it's not a matter of life and death. And yet that's the biggest fear. Why? Because we literally have gotten into a situation where we associate what people think of us as our survival. Oh my God, I'm going to be embarrassed. Oh my God, people are going to laugh. How many times have you heard someone say, or maybe you even thought, I will die of embarrassment? Right? Die of embarrassment? Nobody ever died of embarrassment. They were just embarrassed. But we feel like we're going to die because I'm so identified with what people think of me and my survival. Whether they like me and my survival. My ego and my survival. That we literally think we are going to die of embarrassment. So, I mention this in the context of this person who's asked the question, that they've spent the 54 years of their life making people happy, thinking what people think they should think, saying what people think they should say, having values that people think they should have. And this is something that so many of us do. Our whole lives go just in making the neighbors happy, keeping the neighbors happy. In Hindi we say samne wale kya sochenge, samne wale ko kaise acha lagega, kaise lagega usko. And this is how we lose our lives. And so I'm glad that this questioner at least realized it at 54 rather than 94. Better they had realized it at 4 or 14 or 24, but 54 is better than 94. My guru, Puja Swamiji, always says, whenever you wake up, it's morning. So however old you are, it doesn't matter. Whenever you wake up, it's morning. And that's then the time to keep the eyes open. So it's important to realize we're not saying, don't make people happy. Go out of your way to make sure that whatever people want you to do, you do the opposite. Because you're just as much a slave in that way. See, the problem with the way that this person lives, and the problem with the way that so many of us live, is not that it makes people happy. Making people happy is beautiful, it's wonderful. It's one of the greatest gifts in the world to be able to make people happy. As long as it doesn't turn me into a slave. But not doing what people want, if I'm just doing it out of rebellion, well, I'm just as much a slave in that way. If someone says, eat more broccoli, and I do it, I'm full, I don't like the way they've cooked the broccoli. It doesn't taste good. I've had enough to eat. But I do it just to make them happy. And this is a very common thing in Indian household. It's not usually broccoli. It's usually more chapatis they want you to have, or the sweets. I've actually in 27 years never had anybody food push me vegetables. But it's usually have more chapatis, have sweets. Now, if you do it just to make them happy, that isn't the right decision. You're going against what your own body says. You're going against your own instincts. You're going against your own habits and traditions of health or what you eat. But simultaneously, if you don't do it just because they want you to, then you're just as much a slave. So if someone says, have more of this to eat, or someone says, oh, you should study engineering, or somebody says, oh, you should date this person, or somebody says, oh, you should go here. Whatever area it is, people are telling us what to do. By not doing what they say just because they say it, we're just as much a slave as we are by doing it. Either way, what I am doing is being dictated by what someone else wants. And so I am not free. And so that's why doing whatever they want doesn't make you free. But also the rebel. The rebel acts like they're free. See, look, I'm such a rebel, I'm so free. Most of us go through that phase when we're young. I know I did. You can't tell me what to do. I'm, 4'3" and 60 pounds. And I was like, don't you, think you can tell me what to do. We get into this, rebellious thing. In my case, I was probably, 10, 11, 12 in my rebellious phase, maybe a little older, barely. But it's a healthy stage that a lot of children go through. But it's not a healthy life practice. Because your entire raison d'etre, your entire reason for being, your whole MO, is just to be a rebel. What do you believe in? Well, I don't know. First tell me what you want me to believe in, and then I'll believe the opposite. What do you do? Well, I don't know. First I want to see what you tell me to do, then I'll do the opposite. Now, if you're 9 or 10 or 11, you can say, all right, it's a phase, she'll grow out of it. But as far as our lives, it makes us stuck. We're slaves. So we have to then come to the place in which we are free, which is that I do according to who I am, with as much love, as much kindness, as much compassion as I possibly can. So even if it's not what you want me to do, I'm going to be as loving, as kind, as compassionate as I possibly can. And I'm going to stay true to who I am. Because as I always say, none of us came onto earth with, stamped on our rear ends that your dharma is to make somebody else happy. Or your dharma is to follow what someone else says. We all have dharmas. And none of us has taken birth with the dharma of making someone else happy or following what someone else says. We all have our individual dharma. And so we have to stay true to that. True to our values, true to our ethics, true to our priorities. And true to compassion and kindness and love. Just because I'm not doing what you want doesn't mean I have to be mean about it. Doesn't mean I have to make you feel small or stupid or wrong. So we We live with all of the kindness, but we remember that that kindness must pertain to ourselves as well. That compassion must pertain to ourselves as well. So for my friend who asks this question, who says, I don't even know who I am, well, that's okay. Luckily, you're still there. You'll discover it. We have to learn to trust. You know, a lot of us, we talk about trusting our hearts, trusting our intuition, it's difficult for people to grasp. A lot of times people find it easier literally to just trust their gut. At least we know where it is. Right? A lot of us, we say, well, trust your intuition. I have so many people say, well, where is that? How do I find that? Well, you know where your gut is. And a lot of times, if you literally put your hands on your gut, there's now all of this research coming out about it as the second brain. The gut is the second brain, and this connection, this relationship between the mind and the gut. So when we talk about gut instincts or trust your gut, there's a place that came from. It's not the gut that says, give me chocolate. Those are taste buds anyway, not the gut. The gut actually can be trusted. Neurologically, we now know that so many of the cells that line the gut, so many of the neurotransmitters, the chemicals, are actually the same as those in the brain. The same as those of our thoughts and our emotions. So if you don't have ready access to your intuition, just put your hands on your head. How do I feel about this? If you've got to make a decision and the mind is going back and forth, just put your hands on your heart. If you can access that, or put your hands on your gut. Really easy to access. How does that decision feel? How does that choice feel in your gut? Does it become all contracted? Well, if so, chances are that's not a good decision. Any decision that gives you a stomachache just to think about it, chances are that's not in alignment with your highest truth. So start there. And slowly, as you trust your gut, you're going to get in touch with that internal way of knowing, and then you'll be able to feel it in the heart. And then slowly you'll be able to access it as what we speak of as intuition. But if you don't have that practice, the gut is a great place to start. And welcome to you. Welcome to your life. And keep making people happy, but make them happy now with your love and your truth and your compassion and your wisdom, rather than making them happy with your obedience. We have so many ways to keep people happy. Obedience isn't the only one. It's not even the best one. So try a different way of making them happy. Any questions that anyone here has? If you have a question, just raise your hand. Yes.
First, I would like to say
Oh, he's just bringing you a mic. Then everyone can hear you, including our family joining us online.
Thank you so much that I can be here and that you are back. I feel so blessed to be in this community, and I happened to meet you by chance last year, and it was an overwhelming experience for me. And every 3-4 times a week I listen to the Ganga Aarti and to the Satsang. It's really a blessing. myself is how to deal.
Just help her.
I can't reach her. Just turn your mic. So there you go.
Yeah. How to deal with losses and personal death. I had many
Losses and
personal death.
personal death.
Yes, I had many losses in my life, and I know I should not be attached nor to nothing, and but also not to my body. But I feel it is a issue that depresses me, and with all my knowledge, it doesn't help me.
Yeah. So, how do we deal with loss? And how do we deal with the inevitable loss of our own selves? This is where the path of Jnana Yoga comes in. The path of wisdom. When you were young, maybe still now, but I imagine more so when you were young, you probably loved summertime, right? Because it was holidays. We got holidays from school, we got to stay home and play with friends or go to summer camp, and was light till really late, and play outside and go swimming and eat ice cream and, right, drink lemonade and all sorts of things. And as the summers would start to end, as it started to get dark a little bit earlier, there was always a little bit of this, there was this sadness at the end of summer. Oh, we're going to have to go back to school. And now, it was common. Everybody was always kind of miserable and depressed, and school was starting, summer was over. And yet, you knew that being miserable and depressed wasn't going to help you. We could moan and we could groan, but school was going to start anyway. I've never heard of any school saying, oh, you guys don't want to come? Okay, no problem. You can have another 2 months of holiday. Oh, you guys are miserable to start school? No problem, all right, it's all right. We'll give you all A's anyway. No, school starts. I've never known of parents to say, oh, you don't want to go to school? No problem. It's all right. I'll just leave you a whole bunch of money. You don't have anything to think about. Don't worry about it. Never go to school. Oh, parents say, get up, go to school. You got to go to school. Schools say you got to show up. No option. Summer is ending. And as we grew, we got a little bit wiser about it. It was easier to deal with the end of summers as we got older. Not because we enjoyed them less, but just because we had gotten kind of used to the fact we knew summer was going to end. We no longer went to mom and dad moaning and groaning that, oh, it's not fair, it's not fair. We knew this is how life is. Wisdom. Wisdom. When you were young, it seemed so horribly unfair that summertime could end. But even by the time, we're teenagers, we know, back to school. That wisdom, on a deeper level, is the same way that we learn to deal with end of the time in this physical body, our loved ones and our own. When you lose a loved one when you're young, or you're the first loved one you lose, it's usually very, very, very hard. It seems horribly unfair. I remember when I was in school in 9th grade, and a classmate was killed by a drunk driver. Even for people who didn't know her, it was trauma for the school. Days and days and days of assemblies and counselors and whatnot because the school was traumatized. Even people who were not her friends, who had never met her. Because when we're that age, we don't, as I said, we're not even used to summer ending, let alone someone's life ending. You don't expect it. And so it's traumatic. But one of the things that happens as we go through life, especially as you get significantly older, is the number of people you start losing just becomes more and more and more. Right? If you're blessed with a long and healthy life, well, the downside of that is you outlive most of your friends, family members. And while we're not less sad, it's less traumatic because we've grown to expect it. We know people are going to die. So we're no longer like the children in school who need the days and days and days of the assemblies and the counselors to help us understand what has happened. Because we know what has happened. They've left their bodies. We were expecting it to happen. Sooner or later. That's Gyan. And that's where the only way beyond the fear of death or the incredible agony surrounding death is wisdom. It's not detachment. It's not that I somehow try to teach myself to care about them less, or that I try to teach myself to love life less. It's not that. A lot of times people will say, oh, I'm practicing detachment, like, I know my parents are going to die, so I'm practicing not being attached to them. Well, while they're still here in their bodies, love them with all you got. Love them every minute. While you're still here in your body, love it every minute. Enjoy every minute. Celebrate every minute. And do so with the awareness, the wisdom, the Gyan, that this summer is going to end. Is it a 2-month summer? 25-year summer? 90-year summer? We don't know. But we know it's going to end. And so it shouldn't take us unaware when it happens. And by the way, that doesn't mean thou shalt not grieve. Grieving is beautiful. I mean, it's extraordinarily painful, but it's beautiful because grieving is the expression of the loss of the love. The physical presence that we loved. The grieving bears witness to the love. So there's nothing wrong with grieving. You know, a lot of times when you grieve, people will come up and it's okay, to you, I'm doing it to myself, but you know, usually they'll do it to you. It's okay, it's okay, it's okay. There's no need to do that. There's no problem with tears. Tears they're a beautiful expression, a manifestation of that which is going on inside. You're hungry, your stomach growls. You wouldn't say, shh, 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 shh. It's okay. You understand by the growling, it means I'm hungry. In the same way, the tears are a symbol of that which I'm feeling on the inside. Nothing wrong with it. But don't let it catch you unaware. As you are loving, as you are celebrating the lives that we have, our individual ones, our loved ones, we remember, it will end. It will end. It will end. And so when it does, it's not that we grieve less, but it's less like the ground has been pulled out from underneath us. Because we're wiser. We've understood. The body's gonna go. It's the only guarantee. But it's also a beautiful opportunity to connect with that which doesn't go. Soul, spirit, consciousness, essence. In our loved ones and in ourselves. Because that stays. That is what doesn't die with the body. What we call the subtle body. It goes with the soul. Travels with the soul. So we stay connected to that which doesn't die. You know, and while you're here, I don't know how long you're here for, but a practice, if this is really something that's impacting you in your life, practice you may want to think about is just across the bridge, across Janki Jula, which is the footbridge that's just 100 meters south of us. Just across that bridge and a little bit downstream, barely downstream, is the cremation ground for Rishikesh. And unlike the West, where things tend to be much more hidden away and private and unseen, cremations here are public events. They take place on the banks of the river, and there's very frequently one going on the banks of the river. And, you know, one of the practices given to a lot of very, very, very intense spiritual aspirants is to meditate in cremation grounds. I know Puja Swamiji, when he was young, really young, when his guru took him from the home into the jungles, he was also sent to the cremation grounds to sit all night long while bodies were burning for long, long, long periods of time. Now, I'm not suggesting you have to do that, but, you know, spend a couple of hours in the daytime just watching the fire. Just watching the fire. You watch enough of those, and you watch the transition of one family bringing their loved one, and they put it on the fire, and the fire goes, and that goes for several hours, and then they move, and another family comes in with their loved one. And you watch enough of those, and you start to really, really deeply understand. First him, then her. Truly just there, but for the grace of God go I today. But tomorrow, day after, at some point I'm going to be the one. And that starts to become a really deep and clear truth as you watch that. So it may be a very powerful spiritual practice for you while you're here. Any other questions? Yes. Yes, working.
Shortly that I had near-to-death experience last year. I went for a coma, and after that I woke up totally blind, have a problem with my optic nerve. My question is I have a mini question for sure. The first one, why my higher self choose that? And what is the spiritual dimension behind losing the vision or having this blindness, and how I can get detachment from my old self, because I lost everything changed my country that I was living at. I lost my job. Everything changing for me. Maybe this 3 questions enough.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, it sounds to me like you were given a new life. I mean, a near-death experience, this is something that happens to very few people. Or rather, I should say, very few people who don't actually end up then dying. Probably we all have a near-death experience before we die, but then we die, so we don't come back to tell about it. Those who have that experience but don't die are very few. And it's always a life-changing experience. And in yours, it seems like one of the ways it's changed your life is it took away your ability to see the way that you were seeing before, physically. And that's a tragedy in its own way, of course. The gift of sight, physical sight from our eyes, is a great gift. But what you have to realize is 2 things have happened that have gone together. Your life has been saved, but your vision has been taken. And also where you're living has been taken. You left your country, lost the job, changed jobs. It sounds to me like your life was saved for you to have a different life. And in order to have that different life, you need to see differently. The same mechanisms of sight that used to show you what you were seeing and how you were seeing needed to be changed. Through that, everything has changed for you. And I think I would begin by asking myself, what have I been saved for? Most people who go into a coma either stay in a coma and eventually their loved ones or the doctors say, enough is enough, and they literally pull a plug and the person dies. Or they die by themselves in the coma. But to emerge from the coma, ask yourself, what is it I am here for? There's a purpose. There's a reason. Nothing is random. What am I here for? And what am I here for that doesn't rely on me being able to use these 2 eyes to see? That life is gone. What is this new life that you've been given for? And really check in very deeply. And you may not get the answer all in one piece. It's not that you're necessarily going to have a vision. It's all going to be there. It may, but it may not. And it may be a matter of just moment by moment staying open to the signs and the signals of the universe that will guide you and show you. You know, when people go fully blind and lose their eyesight, they develop other senses, and we now know that the brain actually changes accordingly. So for people who lose their eyesight, the part of the brain dedicated to hearing, for example, actually gets better developed. It's not just that they have an experience that their hearing gets better, but it's actually now demonstrated neurologically. The auditory part of the brain gets more developed, there's better connections, it actually grows larger, it takes over some other areas that previously were dedicated to sight. So, on a purely physical level, other senses get more activated. But the question for you is going to be, how can you use not only the other physical senses, but your internal sense of knowing where to go, knowing what you're supposed to do. How can you listen? Not only better with these ears, but with your inner ear. And how can you see? If not like before with these eyes, how can you see with the inner eye? Of knowing where to go. We're so used to relying on these eyes for all of our navigation in our world. Not just physical navigation, not just how to go without knocking over the table. But as we move through our lives, we look and we say, oh, that looks nice. Oh, that doesn't look so nice. Oh, that person's beautiful. Oh, that person's ugly. Oh, this place looks really nice. Oh, this place looks awful. It's all based on our physical sensations. Food looks good. Food looks bad. Person looks good. Person looks bad. Place looks good. Place looks bad. Just based on these two eyes. Now you have the ability to actually develop a much more refined, much more deep. Because of course our eyes cannot tell us anything about a person. Right? I mean, it's why we say, don't judge a book by its cover. It's why we all have stories of thinking that something was going to be one way and it turned out to be the exact opposite. Because what you see is not always what you get. In all of life's circumstances. So you now have an ability, a challenge, an opportunity to develop a much more refined vision that's not relying just on a perfect optic nerve, but that's actually relying on a sense of inner knowing, inner sight, your third eye. These two eyes may not work so well, but what about your third eye? Develop your third eye. Do meditative practices, yogic practices that open this third eye, the Agya Chakra. It's the energy center of the power to see the truth, to see the divine, to see the real. Focus on that. And see where it takes you. You're gonna look back on this at some point and understand why you were given a second birth. Beautiful. Have a beautiful rest of your evenings and a beautiful morning and day to our family joining us from all over the world online. And I am so glad to be back for Satsang. And I look so forward to seeing you all tomorrow. Either in here or in the garden, weather permitting. So much love to you all.